You put those two together, a woman who likes to be submissive and a husband who wants to love and lead, man, you've got some powerful and beautiful marriages within the church happening, and the families are just growing. We have seen women go from, I don't need a man, to, I don't want a man, to, I am a man,
Ooh.
And women have become more and more masculine, hard, no longer soft. And as a result, we have emasculated our men. To emasculate means to deprive of strength or vigor or spirit or to weaken. And we're so independent that I don't need you.
Welcome to Off Code, the show where we ignore the cultural codes and have real and intriguing conversations regarding the Black community and ways we can move forward to human flourishing.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Off Code. I am Monique Dusan and I am alone today. You may remember a couple weeks ago, Kevin did the man show with his podcast partner from Informed Takes, Devin. And today I am going to have a conversation with Breanna Benton from Christian Families Against Destructive Decisions. We have talked about their ministry on our show before. I will link to CFADD in the description, and we'll talk just a bit about it on the show. But today we are going to talk about Black feminism. What is it? Where did it come from? And how is it impacting our communities? And more importantly than anything, what my heart is, and I believe our heart together is how do we live faithful to Christ in a culture that may be encouraging us as Black women to be feminists? And so let me bring on Miss Briana. Hello.
Hi, how are you, Monique?
Good, how are you?
Doing well, glad to be here.
Thanks for joining me. I am looking forward to having this conversation. We have tried to have this conversation for a long while. It's my fault. I repent. I take the open rebuke. It is my fault. But I am glad that we're going to have this conversation. Feminism has been flowing through my feed for the last several months. I probably say at least the last 4 or 5 months, with some people hitting on some really specific things about feminism.
Mm-hmm.
For example, as Black women, as Black Christian women, we definitely shouldn't talk about feminism until we talk about abuse. In our churches and in the community and things like that. And I don't know that I actually agree with that. But before we go too far down the rabbit trail, please introduce yourself to our audience. Tell them about CFADD. Tell them how you got involved in feminism.
Okay, well, as she said, my name is Breanna Benton. I am a wife of 17 years, married to my wonderful husband. His name is Sumner. And we have 4 wonderful children. They are ages 16, 15, 12, and then 11 months. And so we decided to start over and have what we're calling our second set of kids. But I would call myself a former feminist and not a self-proclaimed feminist, just because I didn't know. I didn't realize that is who I was, and that ideology has shaped how I was living my life, even as a Christian woman. But I am a proud CFADD family champion. CFADD stands for Christian Families Against Destructive Decisions, for those of you who don't know. And it was founded by my daddy, Apostle Tommy E. Quick, who's also been my pastor all my life. I call him the patriarch. And he started this nonprofit, and it's really the mission of CFADD is to influence the building and sustaining of strong families and strong generational heritages by promoting a biblical worldview and a God-first lifestyle. And so that is what we are all about. We're about family. And really, once I realized that I was a feminist, I know it was because my dad actually set me on some research about feminism several years ago. And as I began to research it, I'm like, oh my goodness. I didn't realize, that this had really taken hold of me. And that's how I was living my life as a Christian woman, a Christian Black woman. And so that is a little bit about me.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I want to talk about the fact of like that accidental fall into feminism. But before we do that, I want to just talk a little bit more about CFADD, because Krista and I kind of talk about y'all like we don't want to say the baby making ministry, but y'all church ain't nothing but little kids.
It
Because
is.
Apostle Quick's vision is family, it's marriage and working, homeschooling your kids, and then making sure that we have babies.
That's right.
And so Krista was just telling somebody at our conference that we were at just 2 days ago, that when we walk in, one, everybody has a job they're doing. It don't matter if you 7 years old, 17 years old, or 70. Everybody participates in the church.
Mhm.
Little kids are holding the door open for you and things like that. They wearing suits. But in like 10 years, 15 years, y'all's like kids
Oh, yes.
ministry, the children's church,
Mhm.
the teen group, it's gonna be explosive.
It
Because
is.
there's so many kids. Can you, and I don't want to ask you to speak for your dad, but help us understand just a little bit of that vision in the
Wow.
marriage, and especially that like have babies component.
Okay. Okay. Well, we were doing family ministry. Apostle Quick was doing family ministry even before we started CFADD. But I think it really kind of honed it in. But one thing that he did that I think was really pivotal for us as a ministry is during Sunday school time on Sunday mornings at 9, he began to have a class specifically for men. And he said he's going to call it manhood dialogues. And they're going to talk about the things within the culture and other things that men needed to discuss and talk about. And so our husbands, and at that time it was, college students, whatever men, if you are, I want to say maybe 12 and up or so, 10 and up, you were a part of this class. And they started having some real serious conversations. And so in addition to that, with our family ministry already, we just began to see marriages begin to happen, families begin to grow. And it wasn't just we're going to have one baby or we're not going to have any babies. It's like, we're going to have children. And we have so many. Last year we had, I think it was 7 marriages in our congregation. This year we've set up to have several. And I think it was this year, I think we had 7 expecting married mothers at one period, like at one time. So we've had some that have had a couple of babies within the last few months. And as they are having, we have others who are saying, oh, we're expecting. And so the cycle just continues. I'm telling you, me and my husband, we were done. After we had our 3, we were done. We took measures to make sure that was it. And we were sitting in service one day and the anointing was there and he was preaching the word. And we both walked away feeling like we should have more children. And so we sat on a trek that took a few years in order to make that happen. And so now, we have my son who's 11 months and we plan, Lord willing, if he allows us to have more, we will. But that is one thing, having that dialogue with the men. One thing, if you have strong men, and we're also speaking to the women about feminism, about biblical womanhood, you put those two together. A woman who likes to be submissive and a husband who wants to love and lead, man, you've got some powerful and beautiful marriages within the church happening, and the families are just growing.
Ooh, y'all doing something, boy. I tell you, 'cause I was like, look at all these kids, but then look at all these pregnant women. And
Yes,
it's awesome. But you said the S word. And so this is what I used to call submission.
Okay.
Back in my day.
That dirty word.
Yeah. The S word. I wasn't talking about a swear word. I was only talking about submission. But before, gosh, so many things.
Yes.
You mentioned that you didn't realize you were a feminist.
I didn't.
And I think many women don't realize that they are feminists, or that they are at least holding to the values and kind of the tenets of feminism. Right. What was it for you that that really helped show you, like, because you mentioned that your dad had you do some research, but what was
Mhm.
it in that that really showed you like, oh, I am a feminist?
I think even before the research started, the Lord had kind of prepared my heart because I was just like, you know what? I can't do it all. I can't have career and, parent like I want to, be a wife, all of the different things. And I was just kind of tired. And he sent me on this, research mission for a group called Moms on Mission. And I began to research feminism. I'd heard of it, but I didn't really put a lot of stock in it, hadn't really looked into it well. And I'm telling you, once I realized how the enemy had come in, he is the enemy of us, he's the enemy of our souls, he's the enemy of God's creation, God's design, and anything that he can do to put in. And I realized, wow, just like he aspired to be as God or like God, here we are aspiring to get out of our place and to be and act in a way that was not designed for us. And it started under, well, we want to be able to vote. We want to be able to own property. We want to be able to do these things. I don't have a problem with those things, but it's almost like it was a doorway. And once the door was open, he really came in and with our discontentment, came in and did a work on us. And it was just so eye-opening and realizing, wow, in the things that I watched growing up, the shows, the this, the that, I didn't realize that I had bought into this wholesale. I bought into it and accepted it as a way of life.
So help us understand the this that you bought into. When we talk on any of our podcasts, we want to make sure that
Mhm.
we're defining our terms so that we're all on the same page. Feminism, I think, is a tricky thing to
That's
define.
true.
It definitely is one of those things that's multifaceted, that has a lot of different ideologies that play into it. But how would you define feminism, just succinctly, kind of just basic?
I would say that in my words, we know you can Google what it says and it'll say something like the belief in and advocacy of the political, economic, and social equality of the sexes. But I think that it more so is a reason for women to abandon their God-given femininity and their roles and act like men. We are the incubators, we are the nurturers. We have an intelligent design and a way to walk away from that in pursuit of something else, whatever it is. Many times what's happening as we are pursuing our own, happiness, and we want to be equal in this way and that way, we are abandoning one of our greatest attributes and characteristics, which is the ability to be a wife and to bear seed, to raise up the next generation. That is a huge thing. And so I would say that feminism is a gross misuse of the woman and it is a displacement of the man. And what we see happen with feminism is we see women acting more masculine and then men acting more feminine. So you kind of see them coming together and the lines of the roles and everything begin to be blurred. So we have a lot of softer men and harder women as a result of it. And just independence. I don't need a man. I got this. I can do bad all by myself. All the other things that we have
Mhm.
heard that's come in, and it's wreaked havoc on the family in a really big way.
Wow. So I hear you offering two things, like the more, textbook definition of it, but then looking at what does that look like just out in society? What is it?
Mhm.
We can look at it under the microscope in the lab, but when it leaves the lab, what does that look like? And so, on paper, it looks like fighting for equal opportunities for women, or women fighting for their autonomy and dignity and the right to vote, and all of these things that sound good, equal pay. Yeah,
Mhm.
I want my dollar just like
Hey,
everybody else wants their
I'm
dollar.
doing
You
the
know what I
same
mean?
job.
But what does that look like in real life? What do
Right.
we exchange for that? And a lot
Mhm.
of that is that exchange. And I think you said you didn't call it the hoodwink and bamboozle, but I kind of will call it the hoodwink and
Okay.
bamboozle, where
Yeah.
it's like, well, you're told you're really advocating for these things, but in
Mhm.
exchange, what are we getting?
Right.
What are we losing, in a
Mhm.
sense, where we have these um you call them masculine women. I would give more definition to that, or maybe color that in a little bit with this idea of I don't need a man. Or anything a man can do, I can do, and I can do it better.
Right.
Or I can, bring home the bacon, cook the bacon,
Right.
like I can do everything. And that's not the way that we were designed. There is
Mhm.
something intelligent
That's
about
right.
our design, and that
Mhm.
is God's fingerprint just
Yes.
on how he has created men and women
Mhm.
with complementary roles.
That's right.
And so, but I mean, to say this today is like, I'm sure people are gonna have something to say.
Yes.
Yesterday, I was flying home yesterday, and I wanted to just like watch something that wouldn't take a lot of like brain power and
We
stuff like that. And so I'm scrolling through on like the little thing on the back of the seat, and I Love Lucy was up, and I was like, I haven't seen I Love Lucy since I was a child. So I started
Mhm.
watching I Love Lucy, and the roles, the way
Mhm.
in which it was just normal. Like there
Mhm.
was one episode, because I watched like six. There was one episode where Lucy and Ethel wanted to go get a job. They wanted to have the roles
Right.
reversed because the men, Fred and Ricky, were like, it's not that hard to, how hard can it be to stay at
Stay at
home and to
home.
clean?
Right.
You know, and so they were like, well, if you think it's so easy, we can go get jobs. It's not that difficult. And they
Mhm.
went to go get jobs, and they worked for a day. And the guys, stayed home, ironed, cleaned, cooked for a day. And by the end of the day, they all came together and were like, we don't like this.
Right.
There's something wrong with this. This ain't for us. And that doesn't mean that there is something wrong with women who work.
That's right.
It's more of the ideology of you don't need a man, or the thought
Exactly.
that many women they can just do it all.
Mhm.
Um they can be as strong as men in a lot of these regards. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Oh, it's making perfect sense. And I think sometimes women get caught up in it because, they don't want to be at home. Well, you don't have to, be at home in order to be considered a biblical woman. It's
Mhm.
more when especially when you're talking about being a wife, it's more about the way you relate to your husband in a submissive way. I worked for several years. Why? Because my family needed me to work. So, I mean, I'm home now. I do a little things on the side, to bring in some income, but I homeschool my children and all that. But the picture of a biblical woman is not necessarily a woman that is home with her kids being a homemaker.
Hmm.
It can be a woman who is working, but it's more so about how you relate to your husband. It doesn't have to be that I do all the cooking and all the cleaning and all of this, and he does none of the cooking and none of the cleaning. We get so tied up into, the application of things when it's really about, are you working together in harmony? Are you submitted to your husband? If, on whatever level, depending on what's going on in life or whatnot. I think it's more so, in many ways about that, and that you all are working together to create something and to raise a family and raise godly seed.
I appreciate that it's not just about these doing roles. Well, women
Mhm.
only do this and men only do that, and that's how you know that you're a biblical wife, or you're not feminist because you aren't working and because you are home. There are many of women who would
Right.
uphold feminist ideologies or feminist tenets, but they may not work outside of the home.
That's
So
right.
we have to be able to keep it still in the biblical, under the biblical framework.
Right.
You've mentioned the word submission twice, and the little hairs on the back of my neck. Now, and I am trying, okay? I am a work in progress, but I'm trying.
Amen.
Um,
Me too.
how would you, and I didn't even think I was going to ask this question, but how would you define submission? Or it doesn't even have to be like a blanket definition of submission, but like if someone who's unmarried comes to you and they're like, I'm really not clear on submission or what that looks like, how would you explain it to them?
Well, first, I will say that the way God designed marriage is the husband is the head. Okay. So the way that your husband qualifies to be your head is you marry them, period. It doesn't matter what leadership characteristics you feel like he has or other characteristics. It does not matter. Once you marry him, he is your head. And so that is God's biblical order. And he is supposed to lead with love and sacrifice. And we are to submit to him. So what would that look like? You know, when people are in agreement on something, there's no submission needed because we both agree. But when it comes to issues where we disagree, that's when real submission comes into play, because he is my head, and prayerfully you have married someone who is saved and sanctified and Holy Ghost filled and loves the Lord, all of those different things. But that is when you have to say, okay, I yield to what you feel should happen in this particular situation. And so that's why, first of all, choosing the right spouse, being spirit-led in that is so important. But one thing that my father taught me, he did a series, actually, a class called How to Love a Black Man. That was, I gotta say, maybe 10 years or more ago. And that really, blessed me. But one thing that he talked about is learning how to make appeals, because submission does not mean that I have no ideas, I have no opinions, I have no say in what happens. When your husband loves you, I'm hoping that you have someone who values what you have to say and what you think about it. And so if he has said, this is how it's going to be, and you really feel strongly about it, I don't come out with my neck rolling and look, I ain't got to listen. No. I know how to make an appeal. Say, babe, can we sit down and can we have a discussion about this again? And we can do that. And maybe he'll change his mind and maybe he won't. But either way, he has heard me out and listened to what I have to say. And so marrying properly, when you put the two together, I'm telling you, it is a match made by God in heaven. But when it's not, that's when we come in and we see a lot of the problems.
So I'm trying not to take offense at the neck rolling comment. Again, the Lord, he gonna work with me. I know he will. But what it really sounds like is trust.
It is.
Like that trust will or should lead to this place of submission, and that I can trust you with myself. I can trust you in like leading our family. And because I trust you, I know that your heart, his heart is always going to be submitted to the Lord.
That's
that
right.
He's going to be in prayer. And then as I know that I can trust that, I can also trust him with us and submit to him. And then, like if we disagree on something, well, I can go back to him. We can have more conversations.
Mm-hmm.
But even if it may not go how I think it should go, I don't have to jump into my flesh and neck roll and, roll my eyes and be all irate, because I can trust that the way he's going to lead is for the good of our family. Am I getting it?
Absolutely. And one thing about it, the scripture talks about, submitting unto your husbands as unto the Lord. And
Ephesians
so one thing
5.
I'm sorry.
Ephesians 5.
Yes. So one thing that grabbed me about that is, how can I say that I am in obedience to God and I am submitting to God and I won't submit to the husband that he has given me? And a lot of times, if you're in a marriage and you have to make this adjustment within yourself, sometimes you feel like, well, he should adjust and then I'll adjust. But you work on yourself because you can't change him. And what you will find is, as the Lord begins to work on you and you begin to kind of settle down and begin to walk in your role more, you never know what the Lord is going to do with him. And that's what I have found. My husband and I have found in our marriage, because it didn't always look like it does now.
That's really interesting, because I feel like if I can't, gently ask you to change, Well, then maybe we should have a little force behind it. I hear you saying that my method may not be right.
I wouldn't advise it.
It's okay. We know. Everybody who watch knows Monique she gonna come along eventually. The Lord will bring me.
Amen. He brought me, so I know he will. And I'm still striving, so don't think I've arrived. I haven't.
But don't worry, when it's my time, though, I will be able to send you a little text along the way.
All right.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the history of Black feminism, because it is a bit different than just traditional feminism in that a lot of Black feminists in the 60s especially saw more of that intersectional framework of it's not just that we're fighting to be women and to be in the workplace, but we're also fighting racism at the same time. And so it was this racism, sexism intersection that many Black feminists wanted to address and to push back against. And I don't shun or shame them in that moment, but I do think that some of those things have had some very strong and long-lasting impacts on Black women. And so in looking at the long-lasting impacts of that, where do you see feminism showing up in today's Black culture?
Wow. I think one thing is we have seen women go from I don't need a man to I don't want a man to I am a man.
Ooh.
And
I mean, you go ahead and say it. We hear.
Yes. I mean, we have seen the once you kind of let that in, women have become more and more masculine, hard, no longer soft. And as a result, we have emasculated our men. In many ways, I believe that is what we have done in our families and whatnot. And so, like, to emasculate means to deprive of strength or vigor or spirit or to weaken. And we're so independent that I don't need you. Many times Black women have more education than our Black men and other things like that. And we don't need you. I don't need you to pay my bills. I don't need you to, take care of me. I can fight my own battles, all of that. And the other thing that we've done is we've castrated them in a way, because that's to deprive of virility or procreative power, which is also to emasculate. So this whole my body, my choice, you don't get a say in whether or not we keep this child that we made together, et cetera, that's castration. And so when we look at the effects of it, not even just that, but in our trust of Black men, what trust? In many cases, we don't have that. And so I think in those ways, as far as it comes to the family and how it has really contributed heavily to the breakdown of the Black family, when you put it all together with once the second wave of feminism hit, and it was like during the 60s, and we had the sexual revolution, and we had birth control coming on the scene, and then in 73 there was Roe versus Wade, and all of these kind of came together to make the perfect storm. And my dad often says, sometimes if you see things happening in the culture and our white counterparts get a cold, then we're gonna get the flu.
It is so true. I mean, the way in which feminism has had an impact on, I would say, every culture in America. Every culture, when we look at marriage rates, or when we look at just how many kids people are having and degrees and education, like there is an impact in every culture, in every community. But when we look at Black feminism and the Black woman, a lot of those beliefs, and again, like to your point at the very top, that when we started talking, it was like, I didn't know I bought into these things. we are buying into these things without realizing that they have a name. It's just part of the culture. And
Right.
so I say quite often, like, I bought into these ideas as a young child, not realizing that these were the ideas that were coming through our music. And so when we think about things like Scrubs, or
Mm.
being an independent woman, or
Yeah.
I'm every woman, it's all in me, or like all of these songs that were coming up when I was a teenager,
Right.
those really had impact and influence, and you don't realize it. You just going around singing, you know what I mean? And here you are later on having adopted a full ideology. But then you can also look at different TV shows. Think about Family Matters,
Yep.
even the Huxtables. What was his? I almost said Bill.
Cosby.
Bill Cosby was always, he wasn't as sharp as Claire.
Yeah.
And so we begin to see this slow deterioration of Black men, even in our just regular TV shows, all the way till you get to Tyler Perry,
Right.
who now just wears a dress.
Right. Just
Or
blatantly.
Martin in you know what movies I'm thinking of.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know, and so we see this deteriorating effect on our men, and it's just stuff that we just absorb.
We
We're
have.
just,
And we feel like, we've tried to elevate our value. And at the same time, it's almost like we've taken away what made us so valuable. In many ways. Even when you look at just the hip hop and rap and all these, the way that they objectify women, have we had a hand in that? Have we?
Yeah.
I
And
mean, we have devalued ourselves to such a position where we don't need one, we don't want to depend on one, and we just, maybe it's just for companionship. We've given no one a reason to, we've become the object of many, but the subject of nobody.
Oh, I need to sit on that. And it's true. And then when you look at that, that just the way in which I think we think about ourselves and how we put ourselves out there, and you also tie that into this ratchet culture where everything is about twerking and going off and being in my bonnet outside and just having this huge attitude. I don't think people tend to see that all of that goes together. It all flows from the same stream.
Right.
It just started out as a trickle, and now here we are, spigot full open, when I now, as a woman, am the best thing going. Everyone needs to listen to me. Everyone needs to respect me. I can do what I want, because who is there to actually lead and rule over me?
Right.
Now, I think too, though, while we talk about feminism in this regard, I can say when you couple feminism with the welfare state that took the men out of the home.
Oh my goodness, yes.
This is, you know what I mean? So there are many aspects to it and many different sides, but we're talking about this feminism side today. But the welfare state came along, and I mean, if it was on life support, if the Black culture was on life support at that time, which I don't think it was.
Right. It wasn't.
You know what I mean? But I do think that if it was, that feminism with the welfare state has really come in to offer a blow.
Yes. Everything that was happening during that time, it's like it created the perfect storm. And it wreaked devastation. It was devastating for the family, especially for the Black family. And so now you see in most Black families, we have a matriarch. They have a matriarch. There's, Big Mama or whoever you want, whatever you call the matriarch of the family. And we don't have those patriarchs. We just don't.
Yeah.
And, that's not how God intended for it to be.
Yes. Junebug was never meant to be a patriarch. But that's, like when you think about many of the men in our community. I was just telling Krista this the other day, because the water pump went out on my car. I was like, you know what? For like a pack of cigarettes and a 40, I could have went and had my water pump replaced in the hood. You know what I mean? But that's we don't tend to think about papa, or like that isn't what I think this generation thinks about when they think about their older Black community.
Right.
It is that matriarch, it is Big Mama, it is Nana, and all of that, and yet there's something missing. It's
There is.
lopsided. Hey family, I wanted to take a minute and talk to you about Birmingham Theological Seminary. It's my seminary, and it's a place that I extremely appreciate. They have small class sizes, very reasonable tuition, and professors who are committed to your education and to my education. If you are looking to extend your theological education and are considering seminary, I encourage you to check out Birmingham Theological Seminary. You can go to bts.education for more information. I want to move on and talk about the church, because I think that a lot of what we see in a lot of Black churches is the matriarch as well. And the matriarch on down, the idea of Black men being in many Black churches, that's not something that we really see. I think it's one of the things that really surprised me with CFADD is that there were so many Black men in the church, or with like Bishop Wooden's church up in North Carolina.
Right.
There are so many Black men in the church, and it is male run. A lot of our churches are female run. And like we have the mother's board. I ain't never heard of a father's board in a Black church. I mean, I just had that thought. Like we have
that would be the elders.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
See, I am so glad you were here.
That's hilarious.
I was like, wait a minute. But yeah, you right there.
Where the fathers at?
But do you think this conversation on feminism has anything to do with our female-led Black churches?
Yes. Absolutely. If it affects the family, the church is made up of families. So if this is, the way our homes are run, that's going to seep into the church. And it absolutely has. I have only ever been a part of my father's ministry. So other than what I see sometimes on social media or other things like that, I really only know one place. And for that, I am thankful to be a part of a ministry that has always had strong male leadership and headship. And not only that, but male leadership, our pastor who raises up strong men. One thing that he has said is, it doesn't matter if there's a Black man in the White House if you don't have a good man in your house. And so, we get so caught up in all these different things, but really, he brings it back down to the building block of society, what is happening in the family. And because feminism has run rampant in the family, it has also and is also running rampant in the church.
Before we talk about the solutions, when we first started, I said that I've seen a lot of conversation online about the idea that before we can start to talk about Black feminism and the issues that it creates, we have to talk about the abuse from Black men, or domestic violence, or, those kind of things, baby daddies, and that don't want to pay their child support. Like, we need to have all those conversations. What do you think about that? Like, is that something that you would give validity to and say, well, yeah, before we talk about those things, we do? Is it something that is more of we can do two things at once, or no, feminism is its own issue, we need to make sure that we tackle that? Like, where do you land with that?
I think that Well, my dad has a quote, and he says, "Your past can explain you, but it doesn't excuse you." And so what that means is you have to take responsibility for yourself and your own actions. And if I can only react and not act, then have I really been changed? So it's a heart work that will start and prayerfully is happening at the same time as the women are working on themselves, the men are working on themselves, and all these things are kind of coming together. But I don't want, let's just take salvation, for example. I don't want my salvation to be dependent on whether such and such down the street gets saved, or in this case over here where, they had church hurt, or, whatever the case is. I don't want to wait and base, how I'm going to be right or live right or act in my marriage because what may or may not be happening in someone else's marriage. Now, if it is in your marriage, that's a whole nother thing. And I think that's when prayer really comes into play and trusting the Lord. And I have seen it just speaking from my own personal experience. When we hit about 7 years, I didn't know. We're at 17 now. But I didn't know if we were gonna make it, honestly. We had always said we'd never say divorce, we'd never consider divorce, and I might not have said it out loud, but I sure was thinking about it in my head. And so we were not in a good place, and I wanted him to change, and he wanted me to change, and it wasn't until the Lord got a hold of each of us, and we had to kinda turn inward, and he had to show us ourselves, and we started to work on ourselves. We realized, hey, as the Lord is working over here, he's been working over here as well. And this thing is coming together for us, for our marriage. Now, that may not be everyone's testimony, but I don't want to be wrong because you're wrong.
Mm, mm, I don't want, yeah. And I don't think we give enough credit to the reality that God can do multiple things at the same time. Like just because there's something happening over here does not mean we need to not look at what's happening over here as well. And it it can be a thing of like, look, we need to address both of these things, or if you address this issue here, this issue over here may change.
Mhm.
But the fact that some people are saying, well, we can't address feminism until we address this thing over here, does not make feminism any more or any less wrong.
Right.
We
Hmm.
still need to be talking about the way that feminism is impacting our young girls, the way that it's impacting our culture, our society, our
Hmm.
homes, and what that is producing, and even how a lot of feminism is impacting our men.
Hmm. It
And so
is.
when we want to talk about abuse, we want to talk about, some of these things, maybe we bring those things together and figure out how each is having an impact on the other, rather than this isolating technique of, well, I
Right.
don't want to talk about that until we talk about this.
Yeah.
No, they both need to be addressed because they're both having impact on the Black family.
Absolutely. And I think if you were to take the promised land, we call ourselves a culture within the culture. Um, and what we began to do is, like I said, we had that men's class every Sunday morning at 9 o'clock. And the Lord was working on them, but we were also being worked on.
Mhm.
Pastor never picked and choose and said, you know what, I'm gonna get on only the men, I'm gonna get on only the women. No,
Sure.
we, kind of covered this thing all together.
Yeah.
And so we were seeing change on both ends. But I think that's so necessary. Now, the thing is, I don't want to belittle the fact that, abuse happens and all those are
Yes.
very real things. And that is not to belittle that those things do happen. And unfortunately so. And that's why I say, choosing a spouse, being spirit led, in that is so very important. This is a lifetime commitment that you are
We.
supposed to be making. And so it's a very important that that's done with wise counsel,
Mhm.
and with much prayer,
Uh-huh.
etc. But what we, have seen in our own ministry is it kind of happening together at the same time. And pastor said he had some ladies coming to him saying, well, what are y'all talking about back there? because I can see a difference in what's happening at home. And it's encouraging when you see things happening with your spouse, or when your spouse sees something happening with you. Who can be the catalyst for change?
Mm-hmm.
Who
Wow.
can be the catalyst for change?
You know, so you've mentioned a couple of times choosing a spouse. It's important when you choose a spouse and things like that. I saw a video, it was like a reel on TikTok or something the other day, and it was a Black girl, and she said, one of the things that I am recognizing about Black culture is that we don't teach our young girls how to date and how to marry. And part of her video was not necessarily about dating, but about the choosing, the courtship, the how do I do this right and well so that I am ready for marriage. And there were quite a few comments under this, and because I can see like the little profile pictures, all the Black women were like, no one ever had like sat me down and had a conversation with me on, this is what you do. These are the conversations you should have. This is what you should think about. Now, I am sure that there will be women from every ethnic background who say, well, my mom never did that with me either.
Right.
But I wonder if these are conversations that other cultures, even if maybe it didn't happen with these, 5 women in this culture, the other cultures tend to value. And so they do tend to have more conversation on, hey, you're almost old enough to date. What are you thinking about this? Or you don't do this when you go on a date, or, you don't do that. Like, I remember the conversation my mother had with me was always make sure you got money in your pocket, but the idea of what should I be looking for, or what are the temperaments and what are things that should be red flags? Those conversations didn't happen.
Yeah.
And so go ahead. Were you gonna say something?
I was just thinking, part of, especially as women, we're designed to have a covering. And if things were happening the way that God intended, we would go from being under a father to being under a husband. And so as we were being pursued, we're supposed to be found, and, we're trying to make these decisions and choices. We know the things that we're looking for, but it was intended that there was somebody there that with a little more experience, a little more wisdom, that can say, hold up, wait a minute. Have you considered this? Oh, you're all in your feelings about this guy because he got shoulders and this and that. But, XYZ, these are red flags. These are things that you need to consider. And that's because our patriarchs are missing.
Honey, but them biceps and triceps can go a long way. Don't play no games. Look, I'm here for the real talk. Them biceps and triceps pursue. Okay. When the biceps and triceps pursue, that's what things it can get a little rough.
You can get the biceps and triceps, but if he don't have a love for God, boy, you got some problems that may come up. But no, truly, a lot of times that's what part of what we're looking for. Part of what attracts us to someone. And so having a patriarch there, one thing that in our ministry, our college ministry really boomed at one point. And many of those students that had joined under what they call watch care, when it came time they graduated, they stayed at the promised land. And a lot of these young ladies and, different things said, well, I don't really have a father that's active in my life. And they were like, Pastor, can you be my covering? And so as that has happened, you've seen a lot of them get married, a lot of them are happy, they're thriving, their families are growing, but because they had someone there who, who taught them how to date. But not only that, but when they said, hey, I'm considering dating such and such, he's like, let's talk about that. Let me have a conversation with him. And one thing we try not to buy too much into the dating culture. We weren't meant to just date and date and date and date and date, but more into courting. And one thing that you're doing is you are trying to make a determination. Is this person someone that I can spend my life with? Not that I can be cool with, hang out with, and, maybe be with for a couple of years, or, I am looking to make a lifelong commitment. And so as we are having our initial dates and, hanging out with the youth group, together. These are the things that I'm trying to figure out. are we compatible? Are we, what are, all of these different things. And so he had classes. We have a ministry called Sharp, Single, Holy, Anointed, Righteous, and Prosperous. These singles are sharp. And within, this thing, they teach them how it is appropriate to court.
Mm-hmm. Y'all give online classes?
We might have some somewhere.
Look, I got some people we can sign up today.
Yeah.
Okay.
But absolutely. And not only that, but even the singles, when we have things for marriages, when we have workshops and all that, he's like, you need to be here.
Mm-hmm.
The time to learn about how to be a wife is not when you become one. It is beforehand.
Ooh, that's
and
good.
So, with that, then of course we have premarital counseling, we have postmarital counseling, we really invest into these marriages that, we want to see them thrive. We want to see them thrive.
Wow. I can't believe we're already at time.
I
but
know.
let me wrap with this question. If, well, it's going to be a two-parter. One, I think we've done a decent job of looking at the contrast between, biblical womanhood and submission versus feminism.
Mm-hmm.
But if someone finds themselves in feminism, what would you how would you encourage them, number one? And then two, for the woman who wants to pursue marriage, pursue, more of that biblical womanhood side as far as marriage, children, and all of that, submission to headship, how would you encourage her? So two different people groups.
Okay. So we've got the one who wants to pursue that, and the one who started as the
one who may find herself, she might wake up and be like, oh, I think I might be a feminist. I don't even say, I don't say submission is the S word.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or the idea of male headship and leadership and trust really sounds scary and off-putting. Or, the one who would say, I don't need a man for anything.
Right.
What is the encouragement for her?
I would say, first of all, to acknowledge and accept your God-given design. So when we want to learn how to use an Apple phone, we don't go get a manual from Samsung and say, show me how to work this Apple, or show me how to work this MacBook, or whatever the case is. We go to whoever designed or created it to figure out how it should be handled, how it works, how it operates. And so we have an intelligent design by an intelligent designer. And when you realize that, when you accept that, then I would say accept how he designed you to be. If the scripture tells you that you should operate this way, then just take the scripture for what it's worth and accept those things. That's so important. We can't, box against God. God is perfect. He's perfect in all his ways, and his design is perfect. And we have been tricked to think that, if we feel, like it should be one way, or we have a preference one way or whatever, then that's the way that it should be. And it's not that. So we were fashioned female. We're not a woman by accident. It was a divine and an intentional decision by God who formed thee in the belly. But when he formed thee, he'd already knew you. He knew you before he formed thee in the belly. And so that's so important to just accept and take God at his word. So once you get to that, then I would say, hey, learn what your feminine design is. Once you say, okay, I was made by the creator. He knows how, it's best for me to work, how best to operate in my roles. And so let me find out what he had to say. Let me find out, how he has created me, my intelligent design. And let me just accept that, and let's walk in that. Our femininity has been lost in feminism. And you hear feminism, you think, oh, it should be feminine. But it's not. It's really more so about women being masculine. And so we want to embrace our God-given femininity and realize that it's intrinsic, and it may look different on different people. It doesn't have to be flashy. And you can't go find it on a shelf. You can't go buy it in a store. or anything like that. Like, some men feel like they can put stuff on and they are just as much feminine as we are. No, it's down into our DNA. So when you kind of, look at that, accepting those things and see what God has to say, find the truth about who you are. Find the truth about God, how God designed you and how he wants you to operate within your relationships and within family.
So then as we are thinking about, the one who is like, okay, yeah, maybe I've come out of that. They've done that work. They've done the, understanding that there is an intelligent designer, that God is the one who gets to determine the way that I live my life. And being a woman is not by accident. And I have read the scriptures to understand, like, how do I live my life as a woman? And what does God say to women? What does the scripture say to women? I'm ready to do that next thing, but maybe they haven't had the sharp class. Maybe they haven't had someone to speak to them about dating or about marriage. What would your initial encouragement be to the one who is now wanting to go that route, to proceed into the deeper things of womanhood?
Okay. I would say, well, I'm going to take a minute and shamelessly plug CFADD in here.
Honey, ain't no shame about it. Go ahead. Go ahead.
CFADD.org. Go
Yes.
there. It has the links to so many different things. We have a whole social media platform. If you do CFADD.org/universe, you can go on there, and what you're going to find is a lot of husbands, wives, single men and women who are really endeavoring to live a God first lifestyle and to thrive in family. And that is a way that you can connect with different people of like mind. So I would encourage you to do that. That we have different groups on there called Just Parents. We have Manhood Resurgence. We have a homeschooling group. A lot of different things on there that you could take part in. We also have different classes on there. We also have CFADD TV, which is an app that you can download on your tablet, on your iPhone, on your, whatever device you have. And on that, you can find a lot of workshops detailing a lot of these different things. And it's about family life, how to be successful in family. And so those are just some resources that are available to you. If you can plug in, I know it may not be the easiest, into a ministry that that is God-fearing, Bible-believing, and plug in that way and find a pastor. God said he gives us pastors. And so that's an important part of our lives. And so if you could plug in and find somewhere to do that, I would encourage that. But also, well, I would leave it at that. You can come to the CFADD conference.
Yes,
Use
come
those
on.
resources, and find, find a couple who you've seen, maybe they're a seasoned couple, but they've already walked through this way. And maybe they, could be a mentor. We want them to be saved. We'll find the right one, but be spirit-led. If all else fails, it is the Lord's desire. He wants family. He wants, marriages to happen. He wants children to be born in wedlock to a man and a woman, a husband and a wife. And those are his, those things he desires. Family is very dear and close to his heart. And so I don't think that it's something that you would bring to the Lord in prayer and he would not direct you to someone that, might be right around the corner. You never know. He can direct you. My dad often says, God has a million ways to answer, a million ways to bless you. Sometimes we can't see a way, but he sees and he knows all. And so really, seeking him about that would be important.
Yeah. One of the things that I heard at the last CFADD conference is that there are different chapters that are starting in different places.
That's
And
right.
so I love that because it's not just, staying in Spartanburg, South Carolina,
Right.
and now I have to fly out there. You know what I mean? In
And you
order to
finish.
get teaching and stuff. Like I can go on the CFADD app. There's, coming to a state or a city near you
That's
soon.
right.
There
That's
will
right.
be, a location where this teaching is available,
Mhm.
and it is family.
It is.
When I think about what is the answer to feminism, or what is the reversal of feminism, it really is family. It's
Mhm.
biblical, a traditional family,
Mhm.
and understanding God's design for family, God's design for humans, that, he actually does understand us, and that there is safety,
That's right.
security, in his model for the family, for the
It is.
traditional family, when people are submitted to him.
Mhm.
So thank you so much for having this conversation.
Thank
I
you
am
for having me.
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
so
So yes, thank you. And I'm gonna link the information for CFADD in the description below. You guys can check it out there. Make sure to like our podcast, subscribe, um, check out the Center for Biblical Unity.com, or check us out on any of our social media pages. We have Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Yeah, or X. I always call it Twitter, X. And until then, I will see you next time. Next time, I'll be back with the one and only Kevin Briggins. Have a good week, everybody.